Welcome to Doppelnamers, where we connect the dots between people who share the same name. My name is Elizabeth Russell, and this is the story of my doppelnamer, a pioneer named Elizabeth Russell, who was tried for murder in Eau Claire, Wisconsin in 1892. At the time, it was the most famous murder trial in Wisconsin's history. With me are my good friends, Mary Jean Stead and Kathy Boyle Almeida.
So, with the verdict coming up, it's going to be a big day for the judge in Elizabeth's case, William F. Bailey. Let's review a few points we learned about Judge Bailey. He was a Yankee from New York who'd been an infantry captain in the Civil War. He was district attorney for Eau Claire County for 2 years, and then he was twice elected as mayor of Eau Claire. When Elizabeth's trial began, though, he had only been a judge for 3 months.
Yeah, I remembered he was new.
This guy had military and political experience, but almost none as a judge. I wonder how that felt, presiding over such a big trial with zero experience.
Yeah, and a lot of publicity.
Well, William Bailey is a fairly common name, so Judge Bailey has many doppelnamers, and sadly, they all seem kind of boring. So I started wondering about the old Dixieland song, Won't You Come Home, Bill Bailey?
Won't you come home?
Well, as it turns out, Bill Bailey of the song was an actual real person.
Oh.
Huey Cannon wrote the music and lyrics to that song in 1902 when he was working as a piano player at a bar in Jackson, Michigan called Dietrich's Saloon. Bill Bailey, whose first name was technically Willard and not William, but we're going with it anyway,
Close enough, Willard.
was a jazz musician, a regular customer of the saloon, and a good friend of Huey Cannon's. So when Bill told Huey that he'd just married a woman named Sarah, Huey sat down and, quote, rattled off a ditty about Bill's irregular hours as a musician. Like, won't you come home, Bill Bailey? Now, Bill thought the song was hilarious and brought it home to show Sarah, who was not amused. The song, of course, swept the nation and continues as a standard today. Unfortunately, though, its success did not shine on either Huey or Bill. Musicologists argue that Huey Cannon's music was actually enormously important in the rise of commercial blues in American culture. However, Huey clearly lacked for legal advice. He sold all of his rights for almost nothing to a New York publisher and then died of cirrhosis, penniless, at age 35.
Oh, no.
That's sad.
Bill and Sarah divorced, not surprisingly. Bill died in 1954, and if he'd been required to pay any alimony, he did so for the rest of his life because Sarah lived until 1976, dying at age 102.
Wow. Go Sarah.
So that's our doppelnamer story.
Bill Bailey.
And now I have that song stuck in my head.
So before juries go in and place their sandwich orders, the judge in a case gives them certain instructions about the facts they have to find in order to return a particular verdict. Not surprisingly, these are called jury instructions. Now, here's the difference between today and 1892. Criminal statutes today are extremely specific. In 1892, it was a lot more vague. There was just a general statute called homicide, which said the killing of a human being without the authority of law by poison, shooting, stabbing, or any other means or in any other manner is either murder, manslaughter, or excusable or justifiable homicide according to the facts and circumstances of each case. So there's just tons of wiggle room. That was known under Wisconsin statutes of the time as Section 4337. The next section, Section 4338, got more specific. It was titled murder first degree. And this is what Elizabeth was charged with. Section 4338 said such killing, and that referred back to Section 4337, when perpetrated from premeditated design to effect the death of the person killed or of any human being, shall be murder in the first degree. And the person who shall be convicted of the same shall be punished by imprisonment in the state prison during the life of the person so convicted. So for Elizabeth to be convicted, Frawley had to prove all of these things. One, that Bertha was a human being. Two, that Bertha was killed. 3, that Bertha was killed without the authority of law, that Bertha was killed by Elizabeth, and that Bertha's killing was perpetrated from Elizabeth's premeditated design to kill Bertha. So that was Frawley's job. He had to prove that all of those things existed if he was going to get a verdict of guilty.
So not just dead, but killed.
Exactly.
Killed without anybody telling her to do it. Killed by Elizabeth. I can't remember the others.
Human being.
Yeah, it's the human being. It's classic.
Well, we have all these various elements, and to get a criminal conviction, you have to prove each individual element.
Mm-hmm.
So it was up to Elizabeth's counsel, Mr. James, to present defenses to the elements that Frawley was having to prove. For example, Mr. James probably didn't waste a lot of time on trying to show that Bertha was not a human being. But like you just said, Judith, was Bertha, quote, killed?
Did she die?
Right?
Yeah.
If so, was she killed by Elizabeth? And if so, was the killing due to Elizabeth's premeditated design to kill Bertha?
Mm-hmm.
And let's talk about whether Frawley had to prove those elements beyond a reasonable doubt. We hear this all the time.
Oh, back then there was no reasonable doubt.
Well, I don't know. The reasonable doubt standard might have applied in Elizabeth's case. It even probably did, but it's not in the US Constitution, and it wasn't officially adopted by the US Supreme Court as being constitutionally required until 1970.
Wow.
In a case called In re Winship. In that case, the Supreme Court said, we explicitly hold that the Due Process Clause protects the accused against conviction except upon proof beyond a reasonable doubt of every fact necessary to constitute the crime with which he is charged. So when the US Supreme Court said that, after that time, yep, we've got to prove everything beyond a reasonable doubt. But that was 1970. Did that apply in Wisconsin in 1892? I don't know. The Supreme Court in Winship mentioned that the reasonable doubt standard had started to, quote, crystallize in the latter half of the 19th century. So maybe it applied. I guess I'm pointing this out. So when we deliberate, we recognize that it might have been easier for Frawley to get a conviction then than it would be today. Also, point of interest about reasonable doubt, what does that even mean? James Whitman is a law professor at Yale, and he's the author of a book called The Origins of Reasonable Doubt. In his synopsis of his book, Mr. Whitman says, judges and legal scholars have come to the conclusion that the phrase reasonable doubt can be assigned no definitive meaning. So how can you send somebody to prison or even to death on the strength of a rule that nobody understands? Whitman suggests the reasonable doubt formula seems mystifying today because we have lost sight of its original purpose. It was not primarily intended to protect the accused. Instead, strange as it may sound, the reasonable doubt formula was originally concerned with protecting the souls of the jurors against damnation.
Oh, wow.
And here's his explanation. In the criminal trial of past centuries, there was more at stake than the fate of the accused. The fate of those who sat in judgment was at stake as well. In part, this was because jurors had to fear vengeance on the part of the relatives of the convicted person, but it was also for religious reasons. Convicting an innocent defendant was regarded in the older Christian tradition as a potential mortal sin. The reasonable doubt rule was originally a theological doctrine intended to reassure jurors that they could convict the defendant without risking their own salvation.
It was
So
an
even
out.
if you're completely wrong and you sentence someone to a grave penalty, you're off the hook.
Apparently, no damnation for you.
Okay.
All right, so all that in mind, are you still willing to deliberate?
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
All right, so let's take the elements one by one. Number one, Bertha was a human being.
Check.
Yes, she bled.
But so
Fine
does
that
a
she was-
dog.
So by all the evidence that you have shared, she was walking, talking, marrying, breathing.
Autopsyable.
I think we have enough evidence, this is my medical opinion, that she was a human being and not a
Okay.
ghost, or a specter, or a frog.
I think we can
Yes.
agree that Bertha's a human. Oh, maybe we
Yes.
can take a vote on each element.
Okay.
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 Yay. Yay.
Yay.
All right.
Yay.
Okay. 4 yays on that. All right.
Yeah.
Number 2 is Bertha was killed.
Hmm.
And I have 2 things to say before we start on this one. If we find that Bertha was not killed, then we're done because everything else depends on Bertha having been killed. So if you find that Bertha was not killed, you have to come back with not guilty.
Well, the thing that comes to mind is it seemed like no one thought it was a suspicious death until Frawley got into the mix.
That is what we have understood to be the case.
What do
No.
you guys think about that?
Well, I think what you're onto is that there's a difference between a person died and a person was killed. And
Right.
where's the definition of killed?
Yeah.
We know what we think it means.
I don't know that we have enough evidence to say that she was killed.
I guess we can't say for sure right now that she just passed by natural causes. We have to investigate more.
Yeah.
So do we know what was on the death certificate? Like, did they put natural causes?
I don't know if there even was a death certificate. That would have been a great question, though. We have to decide either yes or no. Was she killed or was she not killed?
We can't be sure. I can't be sure.
And if you can't be sure, then
You gotta-
you're going to vote no.
I'm going to vote no.
I mean, there's a lot of things that could have been deemed killed. Like if she had a botched abortion, that could have killed her.
Goes back to what's the definition of killed?
And then there
I
was
just-
medication given that could have killed her.
I
Go
just
ahead.
Googled death certificates. They didn't start issuing them till the early 1900s.
Oh.
Okay.
Even if we knew that she died from an abortion, we still don't know. Does that mean she was killed? In other words, if someone in good faith, a midwife or a practitioner was at
Or
her
even Elizabeth.
right, if somebody was giving her an abortion at her request and it was not done properly or she had a consequence from it and died, was that killed or not?
Yeah.
Which back then seems like it was pretty risky, right? You didn't think you were going to do too well. I don't think.
Actually,
Anyway.
that raises another legal issue and I have no idea if this was part of Elizabeth's case, but there's another principle that, abortion is illegal. So if you are participating in something that is itself illegal and something
Right.
bad happens, that could be another route to being guilty of murder or some other heightened offense.
Votes.
It's hard
Well,
to be
let's-
definitive on this one.
It is, but let's say we were going to vote yes, she was killed. What would support that? It has to be supported by facts that we know.
I would say there's a lot of blood on the mattress where she was found.
Yeah, you could still die naturally and have a messy mattress.
Leukemia, esophageal varices, GI bleed, lots of things. It is within the realm of possibility that a miscarriage alone could cause quite a lot of blood to appear. When I was in nursing school before I went to medical school, they took a coffee cup, 250 mils, and with red dye in it, and spilled it on the floor. And it was amazing how much room it took up.
Much. Okay.
So not much blood can look like a hell of a
Yes.
lot.
Okay.
And also, I mean, all of the witnesses here are of sketchy veracity. So who is the person who said that the mattress was soaked with blood?
After Bertha passed, they dragged the mattress into Elizabeth's chicken coop because it was so disgusting. Sometime in the summer, a relative was staying at Elizabeth's house and found it in the chicken coop.
Yeah.
And they found a box too, right? And a
It said
note.
arsenic on it.
Yes,
Mm.
that was signed by the letter C.
Oh yeah, we thought that might have been Dr. Chase.
Might have been Dr. Chase. And
Yes.
remember how Frawley had his guy plant the spoon? And there was all this stuff
Oh,
about,
yeah.
oh, don't give me water from the spoon. That's what killed Bertha.
Yeah.
If there was a box of pills that was allegedly the source of the arsenic, why would a spoon have killed her?
Hmm.
Oh, right.
It's tough for me to say definitely she was killed. Those of you who think she was killed, feel free to talk me into agreeing.
I feel like you can't say either way right now, so I feel like we have to go forward to explore more of what was presented.
Well, we can do that, but if we were the jury and we couldn't determine beyond a reasonable doubt that she was killed, our job is done and the verdict is not guilty.
So like we're saying, okay, was she killed?
If we say we can't make a decision and that itself shows that we can't find that beyond a reasonable doubt, game over.
Right.
We won't be able to meet all of the elements of the crime because the following elements all depend on finding that, yes, she was killed.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's evidence to say she was killed, but I feel like it's pretty unlikely she died of natural causes.
Well, remember what Judith was talking about last time about the possibilities of infection. When she fell, maybe she injured her kidney.
Right.
I forgot she fell.
Isn't there like a horse wreck?
There was a little bit of a wreck.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
There's
right.
not a lot of
I'm
evidence
still
in my
leaning
mind
toward-
to say she was
I
killed.
can't say for sure she was killed, so I'm going to say no, she was not killed.
Yeah. Oh, I guess I have to go into that not killed group also.
What do you think, Judith?
I would say that it's really 50-50. It's certainly possible that she was killed, but even though Peter didn't want to be married and Elizabeth was jealous, it's hard to say with not even really having a cause of death that she was killed. So
And
I
even when she was dug up the first time, it wasn't that they suspected she was killed. It was just to see if she was dead, right?
right,
Like nobody had a suspicion of murder
Yeah.
back then, right?
Not at
So
all.
to me, that's kind of weird.
that it was all fabricated, this feels like it's more about Elizabeth than about Bertha.
It kind of took on a life of its own after she was already dead, buried, dug up once, dug up twice. Frawley heard about it.
Yeah.
That's
And
my
then they
opinion.
didn't arrest Elizabeth for like 6 months, right?
That's exactly right. And the reason they didn't is because Frawley had no evidence.
So I agree. It does seem like it's been more about Elizabeth and getting her than trying to figure out what happened to Bertha.
Yeah, I keep coming back to the possible abortion scenario where Bertha herself might have been instrumental in trying to, I don't know, either perform or have someone else perform an abortion on her, which could obviously have caused her death, but that's not necessarily being killed.
Right.
Or maybe it is because it was in the course of something that was illegal. Maybe that would count as being killed.
What if Bertha attempted to abort herself and then someone else realized that she might have been in a dire strait and tried to assist?
Or
Then-
what if Elizabeth tried to help with the abortion?
Right.
Would that be that Elizabeth killed Bertha? It could be. That's the only path I see to being able to support a yes vote.
But again, without evidence of a pregnancy or evidence of an abortion.
All we know is that when she died, the mattress was covered in blood. That's all we know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it didn't happen, but without better evidence, it just feels like supposition. And it's also possible that she tried herself and Elizabeth realized what had happened and tried to cover it up or tried to help her not to complete an abortion, but tried to take care of her medically. And I don't know that I would call that killing her.
To me, the testimony we heard about the attempt with abortion and the instrument, it came from Bertha's own mother.
Yeah.
Which to me is
Yeah.
pretty credible.
And did she testify that she tried to have an abortion or just testified that she was pregnant?
The mother testified there were instruments used for the purpose of abortion.
But she didn't say by who.
She didn't say by who. And then she backtracked because it would have reflected poorly on her family.
And that was in the trial.
Yes. And she was
Mm, and
asked
she-
later in the trial, once you knew about these instruments and the attempt, did you not tell anyone? And she said, no, I never told anyone. And that was to protect the reputation of her family.
And did she say when they were used or she just knew they were used?
I don't remember that she said when. I don't know
Mhm.
that she would have known since
Right.
she didn't live there. Well, here's my suggestion. If we were the real jury, we would have to take a vote and make a decision on this element. But just to see, why don't we just put this on the shelf for a minute, assume that we were going to find, okay, she was killed, even though it sounds like we probably won't. But let's
gotta
just go
find out.
on to the other elements and see how we would have come out.
Sounds good.
So the next element would be assuming Bertha was killed without the authority of law.
Absolutely.
I think that's
Yeah.
pretty safe to say yes.
We're good on that.
Yeah,
All right.
okay,
So we're good on that one.
Yeah.
The next element would be that Bertha was killed by Elizabeth.
And I would say that no way has that been proven in the evidence to date for me. And there
Yeah,
are
I agree.
other people who one could throw suspicion on.
Though I did find the note, and it does say that it was Elizabeth that told Bertha's mother that she had found instruments. So
Ah.
if she had found the instruments, then we could say that Elizabeth may have helped Bertha try to have an abortion. Like maybe she wasn't attempting to kill her, but could have killed her. So
Hmm.
Elizabeth sounds like she knew that
Yes.
She wouldn't say,
these
"Hey, I did
instruments-
this."
but she could have
So,
witnessed it
yeah.
or
right.
did it.
Mhm.
But
If Elizabeth was in fact trying to just kill Bertha, she wouldn't probably say to Bertha's mother, "Here's the instruments I
Right,
used."
I
for-"
agree.
yeah,
So
right.
that seems suspicious to me.
So,
Go back and remember the jail incident.
oh,
Wait, refresh our memory.
they
So
tricked her. Right?
Crawley paid
So
off.
Frawley sent this guy to the jail, and the guy posed as a lawyer that was assisting Elizabeth's defense counsel, and that the defense counsel wanted to talk to Elizabeth on the phone. Now, phones had just been invented, but they were not everywhere.
Right.
And there was a phone at the jail, and everybody, remember that night, was at the wedding of William Carson's daughter.
Right.
And so the story was that Elizabeth's lawyer was at the wedding, and the jail guy was going to let them use the telephone, and Elizabeth could call her lawyer. So that happened, but as it turned out, William Carson didn't even have a telephone. The call was made, and on the other end of the phone, posing as Elizabeth's lawyer, was Frawley himself.
Oh, wow. Do you have any idea why Frawley was so determined to get Elizabeth? Or was he just trying to get a conviction to up his own stock?
I think that was it. So Frawley tricked Elizabeth on the phone, and they made a big deal about what she said. She said, I'm ruined, or something like that. And they made a big deal out of that being an alleged confession, which, if you look at her words, it was not. It was just like, oh my God, I'm ruined. My view is that if you take the words, oh my God, I'm ruined, that could have a completely different meaning, in that maybe she thought, oh no, now they're going to know about everything I did with Peter, and my reputation is ruined.
Mm.
It doesn't mean I did it. It means I'm in trouble
Yeah.
now.
So
But
is that beyond a reasonable doubt? Not in my mind.
no.
Mhm.
In fact, again, to the circumstances, quite the opposite.
Yeah, there's a lot of shady stuff happening with Frawley against Elizabeth. Yeah.
So we're on this element. Bertha was killed by Elizabeth. If we're going to find yes on this, based on what facts support that finding? The arsenic, we know, was planted by Frawley.
Yeah.
And Judith told us last time that after a certain amount of decomposition, the organs are going to get all gooey, and it would be hard to find a substance anyway. And that you wouldn't even find it in stomach fluid. Didn't you say that?
It would be very hard to isolate it in 4 or 5 month old stomach fluid, which probably
Right.
would no longer even be there.
So you can't prove that.
So I don't even see what
Improve.
evidence of arsenic we even have.
Right. So not arsenic, and really we can't say for sure that she had anything to do with any kind of botched abortion.
And there's no witnesses, right?
Where's Pee Elmer when you need him?
Well, Peter knew because his brother and sister were there, and they were going to move Peter and Bertha from Elizabeth's to Peter's new farm. And remember, they went into town for groceries, and
Right.
they left Bertha there on purpose, knowing that she was in no condition to take an extra trip into town.
A doctor saw her a week before she died, I think. They would have known if she tried an abortion a week before.
So
And it sounds like
if she tried an abortion, it would have been after the last doctor had been there.
Certainly possible that she could have tried something after she saw the doctor, but there's no straight line between that and Elizabeth.
Elizabeth, I agree.
Right.
no,
There is no straight line to Elizabeth.
none.
So do we get to go and figure out who really did it?
Sure, but let's do number 5. This won't take us long because I think we all just voted no on Bertha was killed by Elizabeth. So far we had been yes, 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 yes. The final thing would be Bertha's killing was perpetrated from Elizabeth's premeditated design to kill Bertha. So even if Elizabeth did participate in a botched abortion,
Was it
even
premeditated?
that might be killing, but it's not premeditation to
Premeditated.
kill her.
Wasn't a plan.
No.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
to come back with a verdict of guilty, we would have had to find yes on every single one of those 5 elements. Any one of them throws it out to not guilty.
But we forgot, wasn't the jury threatened also? And the judge? Like, I feel like I might
Oh,
be
yeah.
under duress if someone was
Yes.
threatening me.
Everyone involved was threatened with lynching.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
right.
I don't want to be lynched.
But we would be free from damnation.
No, we would. Yes. All right.
Yeah, but I say Elizabeth didn't
Yeah.
do it.
Well, that's not our job. Our job
Yeah,
is
but
we
she
meet
didn't
the
premeditate-
qualifications for conviction or not.
It wasn't premeditated. I don't think she was responsible for her killing.
And we're not even sure she was killed.
And I'm rethinking the whole human thing too, by the way.
All right. Well, it looks like we're going back with a verdict of not guilty.
Yes,
I feel good about that.
I feel good about it too. How'd we do, TS?
I'm not going to tell you.
Oh,
Oh,
more
come on,
suspense.
suspense.
More suspense.
I think we took long enough in our own
Okay.
deliberation. So next time,
Cliffhanger.
we will learn Elizabeth's fate.
Okay.
And we'll also track what happened to all the various characters in the story later in life.
Even peeping Elmer.
Doppelnamers is a production of Harriet's Guides, LLC. Our theme music was composed and performed by Mary Jean Stead, orchestrated and arranged by Janine Lynn Claps. The Doppelnamers logo was designed by Kay Lum. Thanks to my co-hosts, Mary Jean Stead and Kathy Boyle Almeida. Thanks to the Wisconsin State Law Library, the Wisconsin Historical Society, the archivists at the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire, and the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse. Take care, Doppelnamers.